All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the ServiceNow How to Clinic series. My name is Corey Zahora, and I am a solution consultant focusing on strategic portfolio management, or SPM, with ServiceNow. So, thank you for joining today's session on aligning strategy and work with SPM. This clinic will give you an idea of how you can best implement and utilize SPM in your organization. We've got some slides to start out with, and we'll be mixing in some demo use cases as well. So without further ado, let's get started. Just some housekeeping items here. This information is privileged and confidential, and we also have a safe harbor notice for this as well. So before we jump in, we've created this slide to give you links and resources to best help you along your SPM journey. At ServiceNow, we love providing as much detailed information as we can so our customers can really grasp how to best utilize the platform. So on this slide, you can see at the top here that underlined strategic portfolio management. That's going to be a link that's going to take you to ServiceNow's SPM page. And then we have three sections on the left here: learning and enablement, how to implement and grow adoption. Each one of these sections has their own bunch of information here with links associated with each of them. And then on the right here, we have some recommended training. So an introduction to SPM and your PPM fundamentals, which are going to be your demand management, program or portfolio management, project management, and resource management. We've got our section here for Now Create, and then we have a maturity path that you can dive into a little bit to see how you can grow SPM within your organization. So make sure you navigate through this slide to get all that detailed information. In today's session, we'll cover three main topics, beginning with how you want to start your SPM implementation. We'll cover some key concepts and skills for using SPM Standard. We won't go into the Pro version today. And lastly, we'll look at some best practices and additional resources to guide you on your SPM journey. As far as today's agenda goes, we'll start by looking at how we can align our goals to work and how we can become more strategic with our SPM investments. We'll then do a couple of workshops detailing demand management and project planning. And finally, we'll look at next steps for how your organization can actually apply what we've covered. There will be some plugins that need to be installed in order to take advantage of the features that we'll be looking at in our workshops today for demand and project management. I'll go through these just briefly though, so please make sure you go through the slides in more detail to know what to install. So first we have activating your project portfolio management plugins. We've got then the project portfolio management plugins. We've got some PPM suite plugins. This is just going to enhance project portfolio management for your organization. We then have our demand management plugins, our project management plugins, and then last but not least, our resource management plugins. So now let's jump in and look at how we can align our goals to the work that needs to be done. So what are some best practices on how we can align our goals to the work? Well, first, you really want to make sure that your enterprise goals and targets are defined before they're linked with the demand. If you have no set goals or targets, you're not going to get an idea of a direction, let alone demands that need to be accomplished. In the context of project portfolio management, or PPM, demand management is really understanding how you can leverage different demand types, fields, and process flows so you can quickly route and align work to really understand what needs to be reported on and understand what sort of metrics are driven and what areas of the business really need work to be focused on. Assignment groups don't really have to map one-to-one to your organizational structure. This is something many customers do struggle with, but understanding the assignment groups can be a logical model of who will be doing the work will enable you to design a better process flow within your demand management practice. You also need to understand that it's important to carefully choose the various stakeholders by demand type and point out at which levels are they engaged within the business. So understanding at which logical point in time a stakeholder needs to take on a specific assignment. You can also tailor assessments to various business needs and demand types to drive those apples to apples conversions. Enabling careful approval usage will also help to streamline the overall process. Over or improper use will cause bottlenecks in your process, so making sure that you have an appropriate approval process will enable you to be even more efficient with SPM and demand management. And don't be scared of ideas. ServiceNow offers a fantastic idea management module that provides a lot of visibility into the early demand pipeline and provides an understanding of the true level of demand. It's a really useful data point for executives to be able to view. We won't touch on this today, unfortunately, but again, it is a great system to use. And accepting work into the process should not be seen as acceptance of that work for eventual execution. So this means that you should always keep in mind that any sort of intake stream should be evaluated, whether by various key stakeholders or by your demand or project manager. In today's world of digital transformation, it is no longer enough for executives to wait to be invited to the table with the business. Executives must evolve from being measured on how much they spend to being measured on how they contribute to the profit and success of the business. So, how do we align our goals and work? Acting as the executive team, we are currently assessing how we are doing in our efforts to achieve desired business outcomes. We've moved away from traditional annual planning tools and are now using real-time, top-down continuous planning and delivery capabilities provided with ServiceNow. ServiceNow also enables workers throughout the entire enterprise to work effortlessly across teams, silos, and systems to manage their strategy, operations, service delivery, projects, and applications on our platform's single system of action. We've really developed our platform to provide insights for planning on a continuous basis and adapting to changing priorities. So decision makers have real-time visibility into application and project data to make informed decisions continuously, not just on an annual basis. And they can ensure output of work is moving the needle on business goals. For example, improving customer satisfaction of an internal application that is affecting a strategic outcome. So what is demand management? Well, we've defined this as a solution that centralizes strategic requests and automates the steps in the investment decision process. We've really made it so you're able to prioritize the right work for any products or services your organization offers. You can define the goals based on a top-down strategy with centralized demands and ideas anywhere on the platform leveraging demand management. So with demand management, we've been able to provide more insight into your organization, streamline processes, and simplify how your organization does work. Now we're going to get into a workshop exercise here to better understand demand management in just a second. But before we do, we want to get a fundamental understanding of demand management as a whole. So the objective of demand management, as you can see on the right here, is to centralize and focus on business and IT demands. We can also structure and rationalize the decision process for new products and services and facilitate project initiation for more efficient execution. The demand screening and capabilities of our demand management module involve assessment through questionnaires, work alignment on goals and strategy through demand arbitration and prioritization, and demand grouping through conversion to projects, enhancements and changes, ultimately leading to a demand being a very flexible entity. So why ServiceNow? Well, because ServiceNow offers a multifaceted way of making sure that you can submit those ideas and demands through a single portal. You can also directly link your initiatives, whether they're demands or ideas, to various projects, software, development initiatives, or anything a part of your service management change process. So now we will get into our first workshop on demand management. And what I'm going to reference in this workshop is how to easily see and manage your demands, how to build out a demand business case, and how we can anticipate resource and cost estimates. So let's dive into the platform. All right, so I am a demand manager on the platform. And as you can see here, we have our demand manager dashboard pulled up. Now, the nice thing about this dashboard is that it gives you a high-level overview of the information regarding all of your demands. So you can see up here that you have the number of new submitted ideas, you've got your demand number here, and then you've got your pipelines over here for total forecast cost, strategic versus operational, CapEx versus OpEx, demand analysis. And then we have down here, demand submitted, not action by state, and demand intake trend. If you want to get a better view of all the demands that you have, you can go ahead and go to your visual task board. As you can see here, your visual task board is split into portfolios. So scrolling down, you can see all the different portfolios that we have associated here. And then each one of these demands is just a little card here. It's really easy to move these through the swim lanes that we have. So for example, Acme New Hire Survey, you can just drag and drop this from one swim lane to the next. If you want to get more information on the demand, you can go ahead and click on the demand number. This is going to pop up the demand into just a small window to give you all the information that you need on it. But I'm going to go ahead and open up this demand in a full window just so that we can look a little bit more at what is all included in our demands. So at the top here, you can see the phases that a demand can go through. So currently this one is in draft. Going down to this section, you can see all the details of that demand. So what portfolio it's in, if there's a program, if there's a demand manager, who it was submitted by, and then of course priority department if there's a project manager, because eventually, we want to make sure that these demands get turned into a project. If you go to the business case here, you can see that demands can be lined up with strategic priorities. They can be lined up with a primary goal. You can build out your business case with the demand in here, any risks of performing or not performing, your enablers, barriers, what's in scope, out of scope, and any assumptions that you have. If you go down here to the related links and tables, you can see if there's any tasks that are associated with this demand that they're going to show up here. Since this demand is in a portfolio, there are going to be some stakeholders that are assigned with this. So you can see all the stakeholders to this demand in this section. And then there are some resources on this demand too. So you can click on the resources plans here and you can see what groups of resources that we have, planned hours, the planned costs. And of course with costs, you can go over and see the cost plans as well. If you want to dive into the resources and financials a little bit deeper, we can go ahead and do that. So with the financials, you can see here, this is just a summary of all the financials of this demand. So we have our total plan costs up here, and then down here is just a little bit more detail of what those costs are and where they're aligned to. So we've got our CapEx here and some labor CapEx as well. This table can be shown as a yearly, quarterly, or monthly, depending on the runtime of your demand and what kind of data that you want to see out of it. For your resources, we have a similar page for that. So here you can see the different groups that are assigned to this demand. You can see the planned hours that you have associated with each of the groups. And then down here, you can see all the resources that are in each one of these groups, as well as their availability to be able to be assigned to this demand, and just in general. So we'll get into the resources a little bit more, but we can move this demand through the process because we do ultimately want it to be a project. And how we really want to do that is we want to go over to the assessment data and see where this demand falls, in terms of risk and value. Since we are going to try to push this through to a project, what I'm going to do is update the risk and value with a low risk and high value to be able to make sure that this is approved as we go through the process here. And I'm going to give this a higher score as well. So after we have all the data input into our demand, we can go ahead and submit it. Once it's submitted, it's going to go through a screening process where each one of these stakeholders is going to have a survey to be able to look at this demand, kind of see the value of it, the risk of it, any of the cost plans, resource plans associated with it, and be able to make a decision on whether they approve it or not to go through, the process. And this is where, ServiceNow's workflows really shine because we have this all built in out of the box. There's no configuration that's needed for this. This process is pretty streamlined for your organization. So we're going to bypass that survey and say that, everyone is happy with this, and then we're going to go ahead and qualify this demand. All right, so now it's moved to qualified. And if you just want a better view of all the demands that you have to see where the risk and value are, you can go to your demand workbench and you can see this graph here, with your axes of risk and value. And you can see these bubbles here of all your demands and see where they lie in terms of risk, value, and how your organization wants to fund them. All right, so we're going to jump back into the PowerPoint here and just kind of go over what we saw. So to summarize some of the key takeaways that we've gone through as it relates to the exercise, when it comes to demand management, it's very important to align these strategies and goals to the work that you're doing. You want to make sure that you can prioritize work effectively for your organization, which ultimately enables you to reduce projects that are dying in flight and become more strategic in the work that you're doing. You can also leverage ServiceNow's automated workflows to become more efficient, as we've seen in the exercise, where you'll be able to leverage multiple stage gates and align the business needs to the work that's planned. And ultimately, you're always going to need to communicate. Communication is key with the various team members because a project or any initiative within a business, it doesn't involve a singular person. It involves multiple stakeholders, multiple teams, and multiple bodies of work in order to successfully execute and grow your organization. So this is ultimately, enabled by ServiceNow's demand management, but further continued in project management, which we'll get to in just a moment here. So our next workshop here is project management. So ServiceNow provides a single location for managing your projects. Projects are typically successors to demand on the platform. We help teams maximize the value of projects and products they deliver by aligning their work to business objectives. So we'll be reviewing how you can easily, do this with another short demo. All right, so now I am Paul Martin, a project manager, and this is my project workspace. You can see here that I've got all, my projects pulled up here, but you are able to access all projects if you need to do. With each of these project cards, you can see the status of the project, you can see the title, who it's assigned to, start date, end date, and the status colors here, we have green, yellow, and red. Green means the project is moving along smoothly, yellow means there might be some cause for concern, and red means that there's something that needs to be changed or updated or addressed. So if you want to get some more information out of your projects, you can just go ahead and click on one of these cards. And this is going to open up your project planning console. So here you can see this as kind of a standard waterfall. layout with all your objectives for the project. You can see that this is laid out too very nicely. And then there's dependency state. You can update this as much as you want. Since this one had a red status, we can actually dive into it a little bit further, and we can get a status report on this project to see what the issue is. So in the overview section here, you can just get a good idea of the project and information on it. Scrolling down, you can see the summary, costs, resources that are planned and actual, and then you can see the current status of the project, which overall, since it was red, looks like we need to adjust resources based on a new scope, and the scope is that new stories have been added to account for more new hires working from home. So that's something that the project manager can address, and as they move through, the project itself, this can be updated and resources, can be assigned to be able to make sure that the overall status of this project is green and healthy. But this page also includes, status history, key milestones, risks, issues, decisions, actions, and request changes. And something that's new with Tokyo, the Tokyo Release 2, is that you can actually export this status report as a PowerPoint. So, and you can build out specific templates of how you want to show the status report. So if you need, to have a meeting with your PMO team or any key stakeholders in this project, this is something that's very easy to do to provide the detailed information that you would need. If we go over to analytics on this project, we can also see some more information on the project itself laid out in graphs and a little bit more detail. So here we have the phase, status, percent complete, time elapsed, stories by state, tasks, resource, and all other information regarding this project. If we want more details on what work is being done, we can go to the details section here. And this is going to be similar to the demand page. So we can see, what phase we are at with the project, the dates, details, business case. So if this is aligned to strategic priority or primary goal, you can see all of that from here. If we go down to our related links and tables, you can see that there are project tasks that are assigned to this project, and you can see what percent complete that there are with those tasks. You can see all the stories that are associated with this project. So this section will show, project phase, the sprint, the points, what assignment groups and who they're assigned to. We also have our resource plans here. So similar to, the demand management page, where you can see the groups, planned hours, planned costs. You can see your cost plans. And then of course, your monetary benefits and non-monetary benefits with this as well. And if you want to see time cards, so all your resources that are doing the work for this project, you can go ahead and see those right there. But if you want to dive more into the actual resources themselves, you can go to the resources tab, and similar to the demand page, you can see all the groups that are assigned to this project, how many hours, if they're allocated, they're planned. If we need to request more resources, we can from here. And then also, you have all of your resources within the group, and then you can see their availability. And then if you want to dive in a little bit further to your resources, you can also go and view the user themselves. And this is very handy because you can actually see the user's roles, their groups that they're assigned to, and if they have any special skills that you need for a project. So you might have a group that has a bunch of resources in there, but not all of them have a skill set that you might necessarily need for a project. So this is a great way to make sure that you're effectively using your resources for your projects. You want to make sure that your projects are completed more efficiently, and then of course at the cost that you want. So we're going to go back to the slides now and kind of reflect on what we saw with that. So, what did we learn from this exercise? We saw how we can tie all the work that we're doing to the specific strategies and goals of the business. We also saw how you're able to manage all of your work in one central location rather than having to navigate through a bunch of different screens and a bunch of different views in order to allocate resources, to view a status report of the project, or to review a summary level information. Um, your people matter. We saw that you can plan work in a way that will enable them to be successful by ensuring that your resources aren't over allocated. And we understood who has the capacity to take on a project initiative and make them successful in that sense. You really don't want to overburden your various resources, especially if you have resources for certain skills, that are only needed with certain projects. ServiceNow prides ourselves with our out-of-the-box automation and workflows. So as you continue on with the execution of a project workflow, it will then become imperative to drive a lot of cost savings and a lot of time savings when it comes to any sort of project initiative or any sort of strategic initiative. It's also important to continuously monitor the work that you're doing to ensure that the outcomes are being met, meaning our platform gives you visibility and transparency into the work that you're doing, via the reporting or dashboarding that we saw. And of course, communication is always key. You're always going to need to communicate across the various team members within the project. And with ServiceNow's workflows and streamlined processes at your disposal, we enable that communication to become much more fluid. So now that you've seen a couple of examples how ServiceNow can help your organization manage demands and projects, let's look at some next steps. Well, some of the recommendations and best practices that ServiceNow has is to begin with defining an overall process. ServiceNow is a flexible entity that will fit and mold to your defined process, meaning that once you set up protocols for project delivery, you've defined how you'll leverage demand to your scope of work. Aligning to a business strategy means prioritizing work to strategic initiatives and defining that process. And it's best to take a phased approach. Using our demand management, project management, and project portfolio management, they all give you the leverage to utilize any methodology and help your organization become more agile. So it's really up to you and your PMO team to determine your overall phased approach to the product in ServiceNow. And you'll see here that we have a typical maturity model with our project management solution. As you can see, we've labeled it in levels or as a crawl, walk, run. So understanding that at the crawl stage, projects are ultimately used to manage demand delivery, and project reporting enables governance. Then as we begin to mature into our walk stage, we begin seeing various practices growing processes. So maybe a program gets developed in order to combat this sort of initial project initiative so we can become more strategic, or maybe a portfolio comes into play to become even more strategic. And by the time we're most mature with our workflows to help our processes. We can then have that full visibility to monitor projects, track our plan costs against actual costs, prioritize our portfolio against a strategic execution, drive investment decisions across the business, and ultimately enable your organization to become more strategic. And lastly, here we have some additional resources. So on this page, we have our ServiceNow SPM resources. We have information on an upgrade kit. We do have documentation and release notes and upgrades of the latest 2 releases. So today we've been primarily focusing on Tokyo, but we did put the San Diego link in here too, just in case you're still looking to upgrade to that. We have our Now at Work on-demand broadcasts, as well as an overview demo on Demo Now, and then, of course, the product page for strategic portfolio management. We have some agile resources here that you guys can look at. So just an agile solution overview, and then a couple of videos on agile and safe. We have some PPM resources here. So we have a solution overview, how to install PPM, and then a value talk video on PPM. And then we have some additional resources for demand management. So the demand management solution overview, the white papers on demand management, and then a couple of videos for demand management as well. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for watching, and make sure you check out the provided links. If you have any questions, please contact us for you or your organization. We really appreciate the time that you took today to watch this how-to clinic, and thank you, and we will be seeing you soon.